Hi, welcome to Smokin with Swami. I'm Swami Chaitanya, and today we have three guests who are all veterans, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and we'll start over here with you, yeah?
All right, thank you, Swami, for having me. My name is Aaron Augustus. I served in the United States military. I was in Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2003 for about 7 months, and started the Veterans Cannabis Group here in Marin County last year.
Mm-hmm.
My name's David Michael. I was in the United States Navy. I served from 2001 to 2008, and I also work with Aaron Augustus here with the Veterans Cannabis Group in Marin County.
And you were also in Afghanistan?
I was also in Afghanistan amongst a few other Middle Eastern countries.
All right.
And my name is Brian Boone. I was with the U.S. Army and was in Afghanistan in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Did just under 10 years.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, enjoy the cannabis.
Thank you.
So actually, interesting enough, I've been to Afghanistan. Nikki's also been to Afghanistan. I was there way back in the 70s when they still had a king. And it was a very different kind of feeling there, and but it was interesting that it was one of the main homes of the cannabis culture, with charas, hashish, and so on coming for centuries and centuries from Afghanistan. But obviously, you guys said you couldn't get any cannabis in Afghanistan and all. You mentioned something about a plant growing outside the perimeter and one.
Absolutely. We used to run around the perimeter for exercise every morning, and you would have to take a bottle of water. This is probably a 6 or 7 mile run, so you'd bring a bottle of water to hydrate, and you'd also bring a bottle of water to that cannabis plant that was posted right outside of the wire. And you'd get there and you'd shake all the water on it, and you'd try to get it as much as you possibly could, and you'd then go on about your run. And
but you never got any.
you could never get your hands on it. It was right outside the wire, so you
and was this irony, or somewhere someone plant it or accidental?
It's Afghanistan. I think those seeds are just
they're
blown in the wind. They're wild.
We used to have really powerful stuff in Afghanistan. So, but you were saying now one of the key things about post-traumatic PTSD, post-traumatic stress disease, is the fact that cannabis is one of the best things for it. So,
absolutely. So for me, served in Iraq in 2003, and it was a stressful situation. Obviously, it was in Mosul, Iraq. When I got back from the military, I was only 23 years old, and I had basically gotten out of the military, from the military from Iraq to California.
But you were in combat duty at that point.
Yeah, I was in Mosul, Iraq, and I was a combat engineer. So we destroyed a lot of captured munitions. We worked with EOD, destroying a lot of the landmines and artillery shells and all the stuff that was, their weapons, basically. We took all their weapons and we put it on the ground, and we worked with EOD to make sure it was all placed properly, and then blew it up.
It's pretty loud.
It's pretty loud. Yeah. So, we did that for a couple months during my tour. We also rebuilt some of the compounds that we had taken over. So I crossed the border of Easter Day 2003, and the war started at the end of March. So I was about 4 weeks behind the initial push, the initial invasion. So it was really kind of an eerie time, because that's when the guerrilla warfare started, where they were putting the IEDs on the ground, and they were shooting mortar rounds and rockets into your camp, because they know where you are at this point. There's hundreds or thousands of you in this big fort, right? And you just took over their military compound, so they just kind of drive up in the middle of the night, right? Shoot a couple mortar rounds from a mortar tube that's bolted down to the back of their pickup truck.
So then right from that, you come back.
Yeah, right from that, I come home,
so to speak.
Yeah, pretty much.
Go to college after that.
Yeah, so 45 days later, I'm in California, right? And I'm a civilian at this point, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. So as I got back to California, trying to transition, I'd say about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, when you wake up and you're getting your day going and you're having your coffee or what have you, and your brain is just being more active and you're starting to think about your day. Well, if I had not smoked cannabis by that point, then a lot of the emotions and feelings that I had when I was in Iraq would start to basically overwhelm me and rush me. And so, which is a good thing to get them out, but not good if you're not around like a counselor or, someone that can help guide you through this.
And you're in a situation where no one else understands this, right? You're the odd guy out. Is that right?
Well, especially in California, in Marin County, where I moved to, there's only 1% of the population that actually goes to war. And then that percentage is even smaller in the area that I live in.
Right, I see.
So yeah, there was also protests still going on at that point, and I had never seen the protests because I was in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and then Iraq. So it was difficult to transition. I underestimated it. I enrolled in community college at College of Marin that January, and then I went to class for 3 weeks, and I dropped all my classes, and I smoked a lot of cannabis, and I just hung out, because when I would smoke the cannabis, it would calm me down, and I could kind of focus on, blue skies. I was down in San Diego. I was like, look at the palm trees, as opposed to being
I wonder how
overwhelmed.
it does that. I wonder how cannabis does that. It does something.
Yeah. It's funny, because if some people think, if you smoke cannabis, you're going to be out of it or whatever. But in this case, it was kind of getting me out of my head and back to here, the present.
Allows you to be present.
Yeah, what do you think? So your encounter with cannabis after you came back?
Yeah, I wasn't a cannabis user. I grew up in Chicago, so it wasn't something that was readily available or any good in Chicago. And some Snickle Fritz. And when I got out of the Navy at 25 and enrolled in school and just noticed the amount of anxiety and all that from the transition, just going from 180 miles an hour to jumping right back into going to class and going to work and things not having as much of an impact or a sense of urgency. So taking someone at 18 and ramping them up to that speed until 25 and then putting them back in their peer group, I mean, you're naturally going.
But they're not your peer group anymore because they haven't had those 5-6 years of experience.
But from a hiring jobs and from a the standpoint in that regard, they are your peer group because in some regards they may be higher educated than you are because you hadn't had a chance to go to college or things like that. So one of the things I found it very useful in using cannabis was when I was attending graduate school and going in and getting my education and just dealing with that anxiety of going from fast to kind of normal again. And it's helped tremendously.
And what's your experience been then with cannabis?
Actually, it's funny. Addiction brought me to cannabis. I lost my lower left leg in Afghanistan to an IED, and I've got a neuroma between my tib fib, and so when I walk, it was the nerves were pretty painful. So they had me on oxy and morphine for 2 years, but I mean, again, that doesn't really help with nerve pain. But so it was hard getting off of those medications, and I tried cannabis in college about 20 years ago, and I didn't really care for it. It made me kind of sit on the couch. I wanted to be a little more active, and so
you weren't smoking my stuff in those days. That's right.
At the time, it just wasn't that good. It really wasn't. So.
But how did you get turned on to cannabis that it might help you with the opioids?
Well, I was at a hunt. It was a veterans hunt, and there was a guy that I had rehabbed with in Texas, and he had some. And he said, "Man, you want to try some of this?" And I was like, "No, I tried it before in college. It wasn't for me." Yeah. And he said, "Are you still having pain, or what are you on medication?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm still struggling with it." And he said, "Well, try this, man." He said, "This will help." And when I tried it,
you just smoked?
I just smoked. This was like 3 years ago when I first started.
So that's a whole different use now. One was for more of a mental, psychological use, and the other's like directly for nerve pain.
Absolutely.
It's amazing the spectrum that cannabis has. So now why you create this organization? Why is this organization of veterans in cannabis necessary with the VA and so on? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, we can talk about that. You cannot get cannabis from the VA. No. It's a Schedule 1. The VA.
But they can give you opioids, which are also Schedule 1, right?
Mm-hmm. Twice as many veterans die in VA hospitals than normal civilians.
Oh no, don't tell me.
Absolutely. If you look at the statistics.
And where did you get the opiates that you were for your leg? From the VA?
Oh, it's all absolutely.
From the VA.
Well, but all regular doctors are doing it too, because that's what they call a protocol. It's not required necessarily, but this is what is established practice, and if you don't, you could get sued, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So that's what, and then how many people? And there's really the newspapers talk about an opioid epidemic of opioid addiction, and cannabis is the way out.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do with the Veterans Cannabis Group is educate each other, veterans, work with each other, be a resource for each other. We've all gone through the VA. We all know how to navigate the VA to a degree.
So you help other soldiers.
So we help
with
other
that.
exactly. Guys that don't know. Oh, I don't know how to file a claim, or I don't know if I deserve that benefit. Well, Actually, you did. You already did earn it. So go collect your benefits that you're entitled to, and get the help that you need. More importantly, that's the biggest thing.
The help you need, right?
Yeah.
But people who kind of understand. So
100%.
can you go to another doctor, but you'd have to pay for that?
So to get medicine, to get cannabis,
so basically,
what we're talking about,
you basically have to get a black market, is what you're saying.
So yeah, there's a couple of issues that veterans have to go outside of the VA system just to get a doctor's recommendation for cannabis. So that was blocked by the Equal Access Amendment, the Veterans Equal Access Amendment that was blocked last year by Congress behind closed doors, even though the House and the Senate both approved it, which would have allowed VA doctors the ability to continue to write doctor recommendations for cannabis without the threat of being fired or threatened.
And so this was in Congress, and it didn't pass.
It's called the Veterans Equal Access Amendment. It's something that needs to happen.
Can we
every
call
year.
our congressman and try and get him to put
Absolutely.
that back? So think about that, everyone.
Absolutely,
If you want to, this is for the veterans, and this is something they served for, and now we want to make sure that you guys get the treatments that you need. So
otherwise, why does the veteran have to go outside of the VA medical system, which is supposed to be all encompassing for the veteran?
Right.
That's why we have the VA.
Right.
The VA is for the veterans, and yet the veterans need to go outside of the system to access this medicine.
Right.
So that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously, if we can get the VA doctors the ability to write doctor recommendations, and then we have recommendations from doctors that are at the VA, our natural next request is that the VA should be issuing us this medicine that the doctors are recommending for us.
I see.
Like Canada does.
Oh, really? Interesting. I didn't know.
Canada has a full VA program for veterans receive subsidized cannabis.
Yeah. So I mean, one of the things that the powers that be in the medical thing, they say, well, there's no scientific documentation evidence to prove that this stuff works, right? And so, but the fact is, you can't do this because it's illegal. You can't get the material to use, right? But what's now happened is what they all call anecdotal evidence, right? But when the anecdotes number in the millions of people who say, this is the only thing that helps me, why can't we just say, let's stop lying to the public and let the people have what is the necessary
Well,
medicine?
you just heard 3 testimonies of how it works or how it helps us.
Right.
So the question
it's not necessarily it's curing anything, but it's alleviating.
It's a tool. It's a tool in the kit.
Operate in the world.
Absolutely.
It's a non-addictive tool. I mean, it's non-addictive. Nobody's ever overdosed or consuming too much is not an issue for people who have that type of personality. So I mean, it's
a lot of misinformation, especially with older veterans. So that's one of the things that we helped as a resource, is informing them that you're not going to lose your VA benefits if you go to a VA hospital and you smell like marijuana.
I see.
Right?
Okay.
And these antiquated mindsets that have been reinforced by either law enforcement or just society in general outside of California. I mean, veterans are particularly harmed by that misinformation because they're losing the ability to see a way to treat their problems with a really, really effective medicine.
And I think the VA wants to work with us, especially with the new secretary for the VA, Dr. Shulkin, I believe is how you say his name. He did an announcement just in May, talking about you remember this, about talking about the VA and how I'm not going to quote him word for word here, but they're open to it, I think, and I think that they've kind of cracked the door. Now we need to. As the veterans need to push it, because we're the voice, right? We're the patient. We're the people that are benefiting from this, and so.
But this is the way democracy is supposed to work,
right? Exactly.
You guys have to be gathering together, talking, and mobilizing, and then it will be heard.
And so which brings me to a way that we're trying to communicate with other veteran groups out there, because there's a lot of veteran cannabis groups popping up throughout the country. We started doing conference calls a couple weeks ago, where you can just dial in and share the computer screen and it's a free conference call platform, which is great. So then we record the call and then we post it on the website with a detailed agenda, and that way we're disseminating information about relevant topics on the state levels and federal level, and then on the international, global level of what's happening with veterans and cannabis. So that's a really great way that we've been able to communicate with other veterans throughout the country. not just where we
But I
live.
think keep coming in my mind about Vietnam vets who were able to get cannabis in Vietnam, opium too, because the Golden Triangle's up there, and that's why the Emerald Triangle is called the Emerald Triangle up north. But so many soldiers, veterans came back from Vietnam with cannabis as part of what they were doing, and of course that was very big in California hippie days too. So, but you're saying you guys weren't able to get any while you were overseas.
No.
Yeah.
No, you're really focused on staying alive. And you need to be very aware of your surroundings.
I see. I got you. Don't
as
want
much
your
as you'd
focus
want to
out.
smoke,
Well, we didn't have the proper tools to know whether it was a sativa or an indica.
Come on, man! You would have smoked it no matter what.
Yeah. I got work to do today.
No, right. I say no. This one has way too much THC. I'm not going to do it. Right. So. Yeah, well, anyway, this whole evolution is happening slowly, and it's mobilizing all, because, we growers have been up in the mountains hiding for so many years, right? And so we face the same kind of prejudice that you, this demonization of this herb, and when you realize that, it's the oldest medicine that humans have used, right? And it's been around forever, and we know it has no, lethal side effects and so on, and in fact, the side effects are what?
Right.
You laugh and you get hungry, and
hungry, happy, sleepy.
Well,
people aren't hitting each other. You're not seeing all the DUIs.
And
that you would with alcohol. It's
well,
crazy.
Colorado has shown that, right?
Absolutely.
That DUIs are down,
They've
and
gone down.
opioid
Washington
use is
as well.
down. Washington as well. So we need to have these statistics, and we need to put at the front of people. Say, look, you want science?
Exactly.
Here's a little science.
Look at the numbers.
Right.
yeah. And Swami, you were talking about guys up in the mountains in the Emerald Triangle.
Yeah.
So there's Vietnam veterans that have been up there for 40 years now, and they don't want to come off the mountain.
I know.
And so, because they have PTSD. And what I've found is that with the Veterans Cannabis Group, cannabis brings us together. It's like, okay, well, you smoke cannabis, that's good, and then you're a veteran. So then, I think that we need to create a place where our veterans can feel like they have their group in the industry, because there's that bond when you're smoking cannabis with someone, And
What kind of place do you mean? That you want?
so these guys that don't want to come off the mountain, I mean, I feel like that they should just know that there's other veterans out there that are off the mountain, maybe. If
I see these guys in town.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that all of them want to or what have you, or that it's wrong, that it's wrong to be on the mountain. I think that the majority of the time the story goes something like they didn't seek their counseling, for example, and then isolation or being in the mountains is the way to deal with, to live and how you want to interact. But I think you're missing a lot of life experiences by doing that.
On the other hand, living out in the mountains.
But on the
its
other
own
hand,
experience.
Absolutely, no. I'm saying they're both. I'm just saying both.
And they grow some
both
damn
ways.
fine cannabis.
Oh, really? For sure.
Absolutely.
The piece of history that a
But
lot of these seeds had actually come over in the duffel bags.
Why
of
do you think
GIs.
it's called Kush?
Yeah.
Right? Most people don't know, right, that the Kush is in Afghanistan, right?
Yeah.
And so
these seeds were brought back by GIs from Vietnam in that era.
Well, I want to just talk about
we're closing up a little bit. So what's the final thing you want to say? Yeah.
I want to talk about what we're doing actively with veterans in the industry right now, and it kind of ties into people on the mountains and growers.
Right.
So we're actually helping the supply chain in California by doing armored transportation for the cannabis industry, and we're hiring veterans doing it. Only veterans or former law enforcement are going to be employed by this company called Hard Car Security, and it's really awesome. I wanted to bring it up because we're taking veterans immediately and getting them employment and getting them connected to the industry, getting them medicine access, right, and just giving them a purpose and a mission, and myself included. And a lot of veterans
and a camaraderie.
And plus we're taking their skill set and we're applying it to an industry that needs it, which is security, mission orientated, protecting high dollar assets, whether it's cash or cannabis going down the road.
Right.
So that's what we're always looking for veterans to network with, and that want to be in the industry, whether it might be working with us doing security transportation or armored security at a grow facility or extraction facility. We have technology that helps us do this, bots that can patrol, which is really cool. So we're trying to create like a career path, also for veterans. So, it's not just, here's a joint, you're going to be fine, your PTSD, but here's like some things you can do. You want to get it.
There's a way of going forward in life.
There's a way of going forward. You can have a job.
You were also telling me earlier that the veterans are actually very well known as being very good employees.
Absolutely.
Wake up early, right?
Right.
They show up to work
on time,
work hard, and
punctual,
know how to take orders, and so
100%.
on, and work as a team unit as well. So all of those are qualities that veterans have, and so it's something to that's why we hire people who are veterans, and we really want to start working with you guys. That's why we have this thing, and
I think the cannabis industry and the veteran industry community need to work together because veterans need the medicine, and also the movement, right? Legalization needs the veterans because of the voice to the federal government.
Okay, I think
right?
that's great.
So I think just working together and being play nice. Everyone play nice. We want to work with the VA. I love the VA. I love living in the United States. I think it's the best country in the world. That's why I live here and defended it.
People still come here from all over the world because of that.
100%. Yeah.
But
And
we still have to take charge of our own place.
Exactly. We need to make the change.
And cannabis is teaching you how to do that. It's teaching us in the mountains how to organize and be political. It's very important. Very important. Yeah. So we just about out of time here. I think we are. So anyway,
awesome.
Thank you so much, guys. And this
Thanks,
is
Swami.
important.
Thank you, Swami,
stuff,
for
and
having
really,
us. Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.